The wait is finally over. After 15 years, we have a new season of the show, but is the first episode a grand return, a whimpering entrance, or some sort of amalgamated combination of the two? Let's find out.
You have got about 4 years left in your water heater, and I left a pamphlet about solar panels by the stove. Best, Brian.
Solar panels? What other religious propaganda did they leave?
Hey folks, welcome to Squirrel Tactics. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out our Patreon, our sister channel, our merch store, and we have another new top tier patron this week. So, Chance Walker, this one's for you.
All right. Someone's insane. Look out, someone's insane.
I got my eye on you, nutcase.
Alright, let's get into it. The Return of the King. The title comes from the third book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy and is also a reference to this being the show's first new episode since Just Another Manic Con Day in 2010. The series picks up 8 years after the end of the original run, making Bobby 21 and Hank and Peggy around 50. They've been off living in an American community in Saudi Arabia. Apparently that's a real thing, especially with Aramco, who is the company Hank worked for when he was over there. And they've made enough money to retire, so they've come back to Texas.
Everybody got that?
So, we start off with the Hills on the plane heading into Dallas. Hank is in the bathroom recreating all those uncomfortable Tom Hanks Green Mile peeing scenes, all while Peggy marvels the people waiting in line to use said bathroom by sharing that Hank has a narrow urethra and apparently it has gotten worse with age. This, of course, embarrasses Hank, but you know, what else is new? Interesting choice to start off this whole shebang with just the sound of Hank Hill trying to pee.
Oh, God.
I guess it's to set the tone that this is a more adult version of the show. They finally land and make it into the airport. Hank, of course, has to kiss the ground like Robin Hood returning from the Third Crusade. And they start to notice that the shops in the airport, which I'm guessing is DFW, are all luxury brands with foreign or foreign-sounding names. I could be wrong on this, but this is pretty much what every major airport I've been in looks like for at least the last 20 years. So that's really not that new, but I could see it being new-ish to Hank. They get the in-universe version of an Uber known as a Trip. Yeah, I could see that as an actual company name for ride-sharing. And notice the address he puts in is 84 Rainey Street, which is one of the addresses given to the Hill House in the original run. It was typically given as 123 Rainey Street, but whatever. And I find it odd that they would take an Uber or a taxi for the trip from Dallas to Arlen, which we all know is 96 miles, and could cost them upwards of a couple $100. Apparently Hank made really good Saudi money. We see that Peggy is still on a genocidal quest to systematically murder every language. This time it's Arabic. And yes, I should point out that she cannot for the life of her properly pronounce Saudi Arabia.
Since we've been living in Garb al-Daran, Saudi Arabia.
She of course has to correct a Saudi native speaker because she knows best. It's Peggy. What else would we expect? Anywho, Hank gets confused by bathrooms when he stops to get a taco to go and use the restroom. These both look like single-use bathrooms. The little thing there says if it's vacant or not, so it wouldn't really matter which one you use, but it gives us more of Hank being put off by the changes that he's seeing. Also, the rideshare car keeps shutting off at red lights, something else that throws Hank off, and yeah, I get that. I personally just figured out how to turn it off on my vehicle.
Muhammad, if I were you, I'd get that idol checked.
They finally make it home, where we see the scene from one of the teasers where Hank gives Muhammad, their driver, 4 stars, even though he did a great job. Hank, of course, not realizing that for a lot of 5-star systems, anything other than 5 stars may as well be 0 stars. I get that 5 stars should be for exceptional service, but that's not how the powers that be see it. And considering they kind of run everything, whether any of us like it or not is pretty irrelevant. While they were gone, a man named Brian and his family had lived in the house. We meet him later on. He's the guy everybody was speculating about, and he's voiced by Keith David. I don't need to know anything about this guy other than he's voiced by Keith David, and I immediately like him. It's the power of Keith David. Granted, he may or may not be the thing, but that's for you to decide. We're then introduced to Robata Chain, the Japanese-German fusion restaurant where Bobby works as head chef. That's about it. We're literally just introduced to the place. Keep in mind this was an establishing episode more than anything else. Hank goes out to have a beer in the alley and comes across Boomhauer and his girlfriend's son, Luke Jr., who doesn't understand what Boomhauer says, continuing that running joke. And we see that Nancy and John Redcorn apparently run a real estate YouTube channel about Arlen, which, yeah, that checks out. There's a bunch of those for pretty much every city. And yes, they may be back to their old ways, and at least one person in the comment section noticed that they had more than just professional chemistry. We get more of Bobby at the restaurant. This time he's serving what appear to be a group of college kids who end up inviting Bobby out to a party after he gets off. Unfortunately, this takes longer than he would hope because he has to clean up the place and ends up showing up late to the party. But it still works out as he cooks up some food for everyone. It's always nice to have a chef at a house party. That's not a joke. I know this from experience. It is awesome. Bobby's experience is also awesome as he spends the night with the girl he came to the party to meet up with, and of course they butt dial Peggy while making out.
Hello, Bobby. Hello? It's me. Hello? Did you butt dial me by accident? Can you hear me? I can't. Are you eating something?
Hank gets his truck out of storage. Knowing him, he already made sure that nothing had gone wrong or rotted in his time away. Maybe he got someone to do regular maintenance on it, who knows. But as he's driving, he notices bike lanes and medians all over the place, making it much more difficult to just make a turn. The median springing up instead of turn lanes thing is kinda irritating. I've noticed it myself. There's typically no point to them and they just get in the way.
I just had to drive 5 blocks, make a left turn, then go around 2 more blocks and come back just to not make an illegal U-turn into our alley. This is ridiculous. That's an extra mile of driving anytime we come home from anywhere to the south. Green my ass.
Also, Hank's lucky because putting gates at the end of alleys has very much become a growing trend. Every time you come home, having to get out of the car, open the gate, drive through, close the gate, yeah, Hank would not have stood for that very long. This is when Peggy brings up the idea of going back to Saudi Arabia, something that starts to become more common as the episode progresses. Bobby finds out that the girl he hooked up with only wanted a hookup, so he goes about his merry way, doing what used to be known as the walk of shame, I don't know what you call it nowadays, out of the dorm where he runs into Connie doing the exact same thing. We learn that she's attending UT Dallas, more specifically the Eric Johnson School of Engineering and Computer Science, which is very much a real thing. So at some point the two of them stop talking to each other, though it's not clear as to when or why. Maybe that gets covered later. But as of this point we don't know, but we do know that Connie knows about Bobby being a chef and he invites her to his restaurant. We also establish that Joseph is Bobby's roommate. Keith David's Brian Robertson finally gets formally introduced when the guys are out in the alley drinking coffee. That's a little different. And we get to see what happened to Bill. Seems he became a shut-in around 2020 and hasn't left his house since. Yeah, Bill let himself go without Hank being around to watch over him. I mean, at least he's alive, and he very much is still the same Bill. Well, maybe not visually.
Oh no, what are you doing in there?
Oh, a lot of streaming. I finished Netflix, Hank. Yeah. Did you know that when you get to the end of Netflix, you get something called a wellness check?
Hank proclaims that they're gonna get Bill back to normal, and we get Dale's introduction. He's hiding in a trash can, along with the news that, for 36 hours at least, before he denied the results of the election that he won, with 9% of the vote, seriously, voter turnout is embarrassingly low in local elections. He was mayor of Arlen, and I love this photo because he looks absolutely mortified that he actually won. Hell, he probably became an election denier just to get out of office. He also apparently stole the social security number of a dead 4-year-old. They made sure to mention that. That night, Hank and Peggy have a discussion about whether Texas had changed too much while they were gone, and whether they should go back to Saudi Arabia. This is complete with a flashback to their life there, complete with what looked to be servants, something I'm surprised Hank was on board with. The community was set up to be the utopian ideal of what America is, hence a good amount of why they're considering a return. Also, for those wondering, a rial, the Saudi Arabian currency, is worth about 27 cents. And fun fact, the Saudi rial is divided into 100 halalas. They consider the idea of going back, but Hank confirms his wish to stay in America. He's even offered a 3-year contract by Aramco to convert an oil tanker to propane, something he really wants to do, as well as all kind of other things, including a new wife.
Okay, how about bought a bigger house with a bowling alley.
Oh, wow.
We can give you a new wife.
She can hear you, sir.
But Hank, who has been watching Bill trying in vain to get a delivered package off his roof without leaving his room, still isn't convinced. They drive through town, Hank decrying all the reflectors and questioning what the hell poke is, which I'm guessing is actually poke, and it's a Hawaiian restaurant. He also sees billboards about microaggressions and, dear God, Oklahoma barbecue? And after running over some of the earlier mentioned reflectors that he loves oh so much, as he has a slight conniption fit pulling into the parking lot of Megalomart, who's still Megalomart because Megalomart doesn't change. It appears their minds are made up to scuttle on back to the lands of the sods, but first a quick trip into the beastly bastion of capitalism before them. And I find it really sweet that they hold hands on the way in. We don't see that level of affection in public from Hank like ever, so yeah, I like that. Then we get to the end, and I'm not big on how the episode wrapped up. A lot of people agree with me on that. A lot of people loved it. Some people chose to call me an idiot or stupid or many different versions of condescending terms for being less than intelligent. I'm still not a huge fan of it. It just feels rushed to make a snap decision that quick. But if you liked it, that's totally cool. The Hills are stopped by some Girl Scouts selling cookies, where Hank expects them to be changed like everything else and be gluten-free in addition to being outrageously priced, but he's corrected and told that they offer both and that they're cheaper than Hank expected. That's the right way to do it, by the way. Not replacement, but addition. Offer both. There's plenty of room for Peter Parker and Miles Morales. They ask about a box of Samoas, and I have an issue with this part.
They're just called Caramel Delights now. It's more respectful to people from Samoa.
So the little girl claims that they're now called Caramel Delights because it's disrespectful to Samoan people to call them Samoas. No, that is very much incorrect. Alright. Girl Scout cookies are made by two different companies, and Little Brownie Bakers, the originator and trademark holder for the cookie named Samoa, is one of them. When the Girl Scouts brought in other companies to also produce cookies, they couldn't legally call them Samoas, so they called them Caramel Delights. This was done in order to be more descriptive and enticing. It has nothing to do with wrestling families and everything to do with trademarks. Also, Caramel Delights and Samoas are not the same thing. They're alike, but are not the same. Trust me, you ask any Girl Scout cookie enthusiast and they will straight up fistfight somebody over saying otherwise. Some folks are crazy like that. Anywho, I get the point of her completely and utterly made up story told with such a level of conviction that it's true. Again, it's completely BS, but it's a nice sentiment, and the idea of it being nice to be nice is very, very true. The world could use a lot more people being nicer to each other. They then start conversations and share cookies with other people passing by, and suddenly decide that even though the town may have changed, the people haven't, and maybe it's just best to stay. Again, I get the sentiment. To me, it just kind of felt rushed, like much of this episode, but also again, to defend being rushed, they had a lot to set up. And we end the episode with the new opening credits that had previously been released. So, The Return of the King. I gave my immediate thoughts earlier, and I gave the episode a 5 out of 10. That was just a happy coincidence, by the way, and after rewatching it multiple more times, yeah, I'm sticking with the 5 out of 10. There weren't a whole lot of good jokes. This episode honestly seems to exist just to reestablish the Hills in Arlen, to get us up to speed on what everyone else is up to, and not really much else. The rest of the season picks up quite a bit. The jokes are funnier, the episodes are better, and if you're not a huge fan of this episode, I implore you to keep going because it's worth it to just sally forth. It totally makes sense after seeing this episode as to why they chose to release the entire season at once rather than drip feeding it weekly, because this was not a great first step, and boy howdy, the fandom would have been even more divided if they had just released this episode and stepped back to watch the fires burn like Nero with his fiddle. Yes, I know fiddles weren't invented yet, it probably was a liar, but you get the point. Did it do the job of setting up the board and getting all the pieces in place? Yes, absolutely. It totally achieved its purpose if that's what this episode was meant to do, and I think it was. But yeah, it is still the worst episode of the new season, and it deserves a 5. It does an okay job dealing with the idea of the world moving on and time changing, the kind of stuff I talked about in my second Cotton video. And dealing with change isn't always easy, but it's something you kind of have to do. Things change. Now, I've witnessed some changes in my lifetime. I was born in 1982. I plan to turn 43 on the 23rd of this month. And just in my public school career, we went from Cold War nuclear bomb drills where you got to a ball under your desk and kissed your ass goodbye to bomb threat drills and then to school shooting drills. The town I grew up in was considered a strategic target by the Soviets due to a chemical plant nearby, so much of my childhood was knowing full well that somewhere in the USSR was a nuclear warhead aimed directly at us that could be launched at any time. Thermonuclear annihilation is a fun sort of Damocles to have hanging over your head, I tell you what.
So, you're talking about a thermonuclear explosion and adios muchachos.
But the world has changed. My great-grandmother used to tell us about how in just her lifetime, she went from people driving horse-drawn carriages to putting someone on the moon. That's just her lifetime. What are we gonna see? In a lot of ways, the world has changed, both for the better and the worse. But in a lot of ways, it is still the same. Baby, still the same. And ultimately, that was the message I took from this episode. Things change, but it's alright. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see y'all next time.